Okay, today I'm going to show you how to make a one-pot marry-me chicken pasta. That's it. Let's get into it. Okay, let's get into it. So we're going to start off with 2 chicken breasts, and all I'm going to do is tidy this up. So I'm going to cut off the tenders, trim off any bits of fat, cut these horizontally through the middle. So they're basically thinner like that, because we're going to cook them in the pan and we want them to cook through. You're going to put some plain flour to the side, and then we're going to salt and pepper the chicken and then rub that in. We're not going to add crazy seasonings to it at this point. We don't need to. And then we're going to put it in the flour situation. That I'm a bit lazy, if I'm honest. I could have done 2 separate bowls, but I'm lazy. So you're going to coat all of these in flour, and it should look like this, and you're going to put it to the side. And then we're going to start on some garlic. So I've got 1 whole bulb of garlic here. You're going to do plenty of garlic because you don't put any onion or anything into this entire dish. So I'm going to cut the garlic and mince it as much as you can so it looks like that. Put it to the side, and then we're going to go and put the garlic nipples in the bin. We don't need them. So I got a handful of fresh parsley. Again, chop that up. You don't want to mince this, just run through it 2 to 3 times. And now this is the most important part of the entire dish. Sun-dried tomatoes. This is what gives it the marry-me flavor. Make it taste like pizza, basically. So I'm going to use 10 pieces of sun-dried tomatoes. You can do a bit more if you want, if you want a bit of a stronger taste. But you're going to chop this until it's basically like a paste. And then I'm going to put a pan on heat. This is a very good pan, by the way. I use it for everything. You should already know that by now. And then a bit of oil and a decent amount of butter in the pan. I'm going to cook the chicken in batches. We're not going to crowd the pan, because then, yeah, it's going to get it all stodgy and watery. We don't want that. So we're going to cook it separately till it looks like that. A bit browned and crisp. And then move it to the side. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the second set of chicken breasts. I added a bit more oil into the pan because it's drying out a bit. But I also moved it over to a lower heat. And you should do that if you feel like it's going to burn. Okay? So just use your eyeballs. God gave you eyeballs for a reason. Use them. And then a bit more oil in the pan. Remember, this serves 4 people. Don't be scared that you're putting so much oil in there. So you're going to put the garlic in there. Cook that off for like 20 seconds. And I needed a bit of water here. So I deglazed the pan because I'm chef like that. And then you're going to cook this through for another 30 seconds and add in fresh cherry tomatoes. Cook this for like 2 minutes. You want the skin to blister. And then you're going to put in the sun-dried tomatoes. Cook that all through till it looks a bit like this. Basically, I just cooked it for like another minute. And then go in with 1 liter of vegetable stock. You can use chicken stock if you want. And then I'm going to go in with 250 ml of double cream, or as the Americans like to call it, heavy cream. And then you're going to put in plenty of pepper, 2 teaspoons of paprika, and then a good sprinkle of dried basil and dried thyme. Mix that all together and bring it up to a vigorous simmer like this. So let me explain something. When I'm simmering it, I put it on this kind of hob setting. So that's my largest hob setting on like a medium-high heat. This is very important because it's going to make sure that when you put the pasta in, it's going to cook and boil properly. And then at any point, if the water starts drying out before the pasta is done, I just drop it to this heat setting. So it's like the lowest setting on the largest hob. Okay, so again, just use your eyeballs. God gave them to you for a reason. Now getting back to the recipe, I'm going to add in 400 grams of penne pasta. You can use any sort of pasta you want. Fusilli is always a good shout, the spirally ones. So I'm going to put in plenty of salt to compensate for the pasta that I've put in. And then I'm going to simmer this on a medium-high heat for 10 to 12 minutes. Usually 12 minutes is the sweet spot, but I'm going to do this on a medium-high heat. Stir it occasionally so it doesn't stick to the bottom. In the meantime, I'm just going to chop up these chicken breasts into these large chunks. It should have a crisp skin on it. Okay, that's what makes it delicious. So I'm going to keep stirring it until it starts looking like this. Can you see? Still fluid in the pan. Now at this stage, this is the 10-minute mark. So I went in with a handful of spinach and a splash more water because I used my eyeballs. It was drying out and I could see that the pasta wasn't done yet. So I put in another 100 ml of water there. Mix that through until the spinach wilted, and then for the last minute I dropped the heat to that lower setting on the largest hob. And then after a minute I just tried the pasta to see if it was done, and it was done. So it all good there. Can you see how there's still water in the pan? That's how you want it to be, and I'll explain why. So you're gonna put the chicken in and then the parsley, mix it all together for like 20 seconds and then immediately turn off the heat. So with the heat turned off, we're gonna add in plenty of Parmesan or hard cheese. Okay, plenty. Don't stop, keep going. And then this all with the heat turned off, by the way. So you can let the residual heat do the work. Top you off with parsley and some chili flakes if you're not shy. And this is the final product. Okay, now that the dish is done, I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks on how to make this entire thing perfect. So the first thing I want to talk about is cooking the pasta. Now, if you look at most like pasta packaging, it might say cook for 8 to 10 minutes till it's like al dente. But in this particular instance, I cook it for 10 to 12 minutes. So what I do is I put my timer on for 10 minutes and I put my timer on for 12 minutes. And there's a reason for that. So the first thing is at the 10-minute mark, I add in the spinach and I wilt that through. But also at the 10-minute mark, I'm checking for 2 things. I'm checking if the pasta's done and if there's enough fluid in the pan, because we want our final dish to be saucy. So at the 10-minute mark, I taste the pasta, and if the pasta is done, then great, I can drop the heat to medium, add all the chicken and the parsley into it, mix it through, cook that for 20 seconds, take off the heat, and then if there's plenty of water left in the pan, good. But if not, that brings me on to my second point, which is use your eyeballs and intuition, man. God gave you eyeballs, you use them. So you're going to look at it at the 10-minute mark and you taste it. Pasta's not done yet. Dish is drying out a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a splash more water, maybe drop the heat a bit because the pasta's going to almost be done at the 10-minute mark. At the 12-minute mark, the pasta should be done 100%. But at the 12-minute mark, you should end up with pasta with decent amount of fluid in the pan. So when you actually take it off, the residual heat does the work and brings it all together. Okay, then at that point you can add in parmesan and then mix that all together, and that residual heat will actually allow the parmesan to melt into the residual amount of water and then glaze the entire pasta dish, man. Does that make sense? So I went through quite a bit there, so let's just summarize. So the first thing is at the 10-minute mark when you add in the spinach, I look for two things. Is the pasta cooked and is there enough fluid in the pan? So at the 10-minute mark when I add the spinach and I wilt it, if the pasta's done and there's enough fluid in the pan, put the chicken in, put the parsley in, mix it all together, turn the heat off. Happy days. So just make sure you got enough fluid in the pan that when the residual heat actually dries it out, you're still left with enough. Or if you get to the 10-minute mark and the pasta isn't done, but you don't have enough fluid in the pan, then you know what you need to do. Add a splash more water. But if you get to the 10-minute mark and then the pasta is pretty much done, but there's not enough fluid in the pan, at this stage, what I would do is I would add some water, drop the heat to medium, give it a good stir, and then turn the heat off. That residual heat is going to do the work. Now, the water that you add in all of these scenarios, make sure it is boiling water, please. You don't want to put cold water in. It's going to bring the heat of the entire dish down. Make sense? Okay, now point number 3 is adding the sun-dried tomatoes. Now, the sun-dried tomatoes actually give this entire dish the whole marry me flavor. I don't even know what the hell that means, like marry me. It basically tastes a bit like pizza, man. Now, you can actually alter or adapt the strength of the sun-dried tomatoes in the dish. So I put in this recipe about 8 to 10 pieces. That for me is very good. You can go a bit stronger if you want. Make it 12 pieces, 13 pieces. You can go a bit weaker if you want. Make it 6 pieces, 7 pieces. Completely adaptable. So when you do that, make sure you get decent sized sun-dried tomatoes. It's going to have plenty of flavor in there, and then when you actually chop it all up and make it a paste and you put it all in, it's going to give enough flavor to the dish, because you have to understand there's only garlic going in here and the sun-dried tomatoes. There's no onions, there's no tomato base. So do it to your preference. So the next point I want to make is making this dish spicy. Okay, if you're not shy, if you like a bit of spice, then with the paprika, put in some cayenne pepper and some chili flakes. I didn't do it because, I'll be honest, I was feeding a toddler with this meal, man. That's why I just put the chili flakes on top. I could just move the top away, get the food from underneath and feed the toddler, man. Anyways, guys, that is the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and if there's anything else that you want me to make, let me know. I'll see you in the next one.